Hi, it's Candace. Let's talk about how you decide on your assessment plan. After you take a class like this, it's natural for you to just kind of be overwhelmed with all the choices that you have for assessment. But at some point, you're going to need to decide what is it that you want to assess in library instruction. Few tips for you. Number one, focus on the outcomes, not the methods. It's really kind of common for someone to go to a conference or take a class like this or read on a discussion board or a listserv a really cool technique and think, oh, that sounds so neat, let's try that here. Hold your horses and first consider what are you going to learn and are you going to be able to do anything from those results, because results really need to be actionable. I love this quote from a past participant of the class. Honestly, what's the point of assessment if it isn't useful in directly helping us to modify and continually strengthen our practice? Back at the first library I worked at, we used to do feedback forms at the end of every library session. And then I would dutifully pile up the forms. I'd look through them real quick, see if there was anything that stuck out at me. But then I would bring them down, I'd give them to the secretary, and the secretary would then open up the filing cabinet and then paperclip them together and put them in the filing cabinet and close the door, and no one ever looked at them again. And none of us ever thought to ask, why are we spending 5 minutes of our session having students fill out these feedback forms that no one ever looks at? This is probably an issue. Finally, I want to suggest that you consider using an impact effort matrix. This is one of my favorite ways to prioritize projects, both assessment and just regular instruction or other types of projects. First, you look at the effort. Low effort are things that don't take too much time and are easy to accomplish. High effort projects are time consuming and resource hungry. An example of a low effort would be if I decide I just want to do a muddiest point for one class. If it's a new class I'm teaching, I just want some fast feedback. So I bring a bunch of index cards and ask them to write down a question they still have after the session. And I review it after the session. That's it. Real low effort. High effort, as you might guess, would be almost any level 3 projects that you do where there's a lot of people involved and you need to figure out to coordinate and talk to and get approval and collect papers and such. Those would be high effort projects. You also want to consider the impact. A low impact project, it means that not much is going to change because of it. A high impact project, on the other hand, is going to be some dramatic change. So an example of a low impact might be a limitation of the assessment or the environment. Let's say you assess the work of the students in a program that's very small and doesn't come to the library for instruction very much. In our case, that would be math. An assessment of that cohort would probably have very little impact. It could also be environmental. You could do an assessment of our library classroom seating arrangements, but there's no money or political will to make changes, so impact is going to be low. With a high impact project, a lot of learners will be affected, or it will have a major impact on your library instruction program. After you have labeled the projects, then you see which box they fit in. First, we have high impact, low effort. Those are quick wins. They're low-hanging fruit, and you should eat as much of that fruit as you can. High impact, high effort are major projects. Do your homework before committing to these, and you shouldn't have more than 1 or 2 going on personally. Low impact, low effort, those would be fill-ins. You can do these as time permits, but there's no real harm if they slip through the cracks. Low impact, high effort, danger, hard slogs. Avoid these if at all possible. Sometimes politically you can't, but at least you can throttle your psychic energy if you know the project is in this category. A few examples. Quick wins would be, one example would be observational assessment case study that you read about in the week of level 2. With the sample size, kept it really manageable, and it had a really big impact on a workshop that we teach a lot. An example of a major project was a citation analysis project that Eric and I had done for 2 years. What we did is we collected freshman papers and senior papers and compared how they did sources. We had to hire people to code papers. Eric and I committed a lot of time, multiple summers, to training the coders and reviewing them and reviewing their results and putting them into software and running the analysis. We had to rely on faculty participation to give us the student papers, But in the end, the University Office of Assessment and the core curriculum director who did oversaw Gen Ed were thrilled because we had value-added data that they could give to our accreditation agencies. On the other hand, this same exact project could also personally be called a hard slog, because even though our study showed that there were some real weaknesses in our senior level papers and that we needed to strengthen information literacy within our curriculum to address them, when we presented this to the campus, they were like, "Oh, thank you, Candace and Eric. That was great. That was really interesting." And no changes were made. And we collected from 6 different faculty, and 3 faculty members and departments didn't even want to know the results. They were happy to share the papers with us, but they were just not that invested in information literacy that they wanted to know what we found out. So this goes all back to the beginning, to what Eric was asking us at the very beginning. What do you want to know? What will you do with that information? And it's going to be environmentally sensitive. The better you know your students, your faculty, your colleagues, and your campus, the better equipped you'll be to make solid decisions about assessment.